if somebody basically not resides, but rather if somebody is a customer within your commercial accommodation, bread and breakfast for instance, and staying there for more than 28 days. So for more than 28 days, which equals to 29 days at least, 29 days at least. Therefore, they can actually have a relief in recognized output VAT at 60%. Okay, that's basically what we have. So now we have a bread and breakfast, and we've got a person who's now supposedly paying 1,000 rands per day. And in our instance that we tried to touch on, we make provision of accommodation to this person to sleep there and to have food there, inclusive in the 1,000 rands is basically him having to sleep, and he has access to a TV, to a radio, to air conditioning, and to cleaning as well. And likely there's also food there as well. But within the 1,000 rands included the charge, there's within the actual 1,000 rand which has been levied to a customer there, there's also an inclusive portion of 150 rands, which is a magazine that he gets every day. That is not part of a domestic good that's within the list, so it doesn't make up that actual list for domestic goods. So what would be the output VAT? Say this guy stays within the hotel for 5 days, and in another situation he stays in the hotel for 30 days. And let's say the 1,000 rands is an exclusive of a VAT amount. So what is our VAT situation in that situation? So now, output VAT that the actual commercial accommodation in this situation would be as follows. We would go into say 5 days times 1,000 rands, right, times 15%, because why? Because it's an exclusive of a VAT number, so therefore we don't have to apply the fraction, but a percentage of 15%, which is our VAT rate, and this would give us our output VAT. So 150 times 5, that would likely be 750 would be the output VAT, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll look at that now. See, so we'd say 5,000 times 1,000 rands, which equals to 5,000 times 15%, 750, which is quite correct. However, so we did not get the 60% relief, because why? Because it's 5 days, they don't qualify for the actual 60% relief. Whereas for 30 days, now the relief kicks in, you know. But can we be in agreement in saying that the 1,000 rand charge also includes a charge of 150, which is not making up part of the domestic goods, right? So in that instance, we need to eliminate the 150, which would likely be a normal taxable supply in its own cost. So the 150 must be taken into account by doing the following. 1,000 rands is our charge over here, and we're going to say 1,000 rands minus 150, right, would equals to 850. So this would be the charge that would have your domestic goods included, and all the domestic goods included, including the food charge and including the charge of him having to sleep. Whereas with this one, it would be 150, which would not have any relief, so it would be likely times by 15%. Okay, let's write the same likely charge by 30 days times 15%, which is the VAT rate, right? Whereas in this situation now, we've got 150 eliminated from the 1,000 rands, which gives us 850, and this 850 we then times it by 30 days, then we then times it by 15%, then we then times it by 60%, right? Because we had to take the 60% into consideration. Even if we brought 60% over here, it would still be the same count, if I'm not mistaken. So we have to be very mindful of that situation. So in that instance, in the first instance, we'll have 850 times 30 times 60%, which equals to 15,300, right, times 15%. So output VAT will likely be, output VAT would be recorded as 2,295. In this instance, with the 150, we'd have 150 times 30, which equals to times 15%, which equals to 675. Therefore, output VAT payable would equals to 675 plus 2,295, which equals to 2,970. So that's basically what we must be very cautious about when we're dealing with commercial accommodation and the 60% relief kicks in. So these guys are basically now, levying an output VAT of 60% in this instance, whereas in this instance it's not applicable because this newspaper or the magazine rather is not part of the domestic goods and services, and so the output VAT payable would be 2,970. So they cannot now, because the input VAT is basically based at 60%, they also cannot, claim more than they actually levied. So they'll also be restricted to to the 60% when having to deal with any input situations, because they would have triggered the 60% relief basically, as opposed to having been charging output VAT at 100%. So that is a unique situation that can happen with commercial accommodation, so it's a very fine line. So we always need to be very aware of that conversation, and the domestic goods and services also play a crucial role within the commercial accommodation supply, taking costs, so that's basically it. When we're talking about exempt supplies, it's quite a fine line. So just remember that most financial services are basically exempt supplies. Education is an exempt supply in most cases if it's coming from an organized or registered institution. And residential accommodation is also, an exempt supply. So if somebody is letting out residential accommodation, just know that that residential accommodation would be an exempt supply, But then again, be very careful as to what constitutes an accommodation or a particular building being